We'll find out. It's time now for the quarterfinals. So I'm going to send it on over to Marshall and Paul.
Thank you, Maria, and welcome to the booth here. Early in the morning on a Sunday, it's tempting to just sort of ease your way in, Paul, but that's really not what this is about. We have elimination matches right off the bat here. We're going to be starting off with our quarterfinal match. Really interesting scenario here where we have somebody who would now be considered part of the old guard in Javier Dominguez with 7 top finishes, including, you know, the best of the best from him. On the other side of the table, though, is David Olsen, and this is his Pro Tour debut. This is the first time that he's ever played. In fact, the way that he actually got here, he kind of scraped in. You see David on the right there from Canada. He had a regional championship in his backyard, he said, in Canada. He skipped on over to it. He actually ended up playing an LCQ, which is a last chance qualifier. That's for people who aren't currently qualified for the regional championship. He won that. Then he went 5-3 on day 1, which is barely enough to make it to day 2. And then he won all of his matches in Swiss on day 2 to make top 8. And that's what qualified him here. Meanwhile, you have Javier Dominguez from Spain, who's kind of like, I'm here, I'm going to be here. And, you know, he's a heavy hitter in the Pro Magic realm.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen Javier kind of in a top 8. He's always been qualified and been playing a bunch of events. Of course, our world champion in 2018, but he's back, right? Back in tabletop play. Had a great finish, actually, at the last event as well. And now teaming up with arguably the best team in the world, right? I mean, I guess you can't even argue it anymore.
Yeah.
It's just the best team in the world. 4 members in the top 8 here. And yeah, I mean, with the most dominant run, with the first person to kind of lock that spot into the top 8.
Matchup-wise, Paul, they touched on it at the news desk there, but David Olsen actually has the matchup that he wants. You know, it's hard to imagine that you're like, I'm going to sit across from Javier Dominguez in the top 8, and Javier's playing the deck of the tournament, the one that put the most people in the top 8. It was simultaneously the most popular and, at least relative to how many people played it, the most successful deck in the tournament, and yet somehow that is the matchup that David wants.
Yeah, so the Rakdos Midrange deck was by far the best performing deck in the event. And if you just count the members of Team Handshake and their performance with this kind of a few more burn spells, Rakdos burn as they call it, they won 67% of their matches over the course of this event. Now, coming into this, David Olsen did want to play against Rakdos. However, because this Team Handshake deck has a couple of different cards in their deck, I think it's a lot closer than it looks. I think this Rakdos mid-range deck has the ability to close things out potentially before David can stabilize. So I think even if David is favored in this matchup, it's not a polarized matchup. I think it's going to be close, maybe a small edge, but then again, you're playing against Javier Dominguez.
Yeah, the cool part is that as a viewer, and by the way, welcome along. We're really happy to have you here on Sunday at the Pro Tour. It'll be easy to see because David goes over the top in a very, very, very big way, and you'll know when we get there. As we stand right now, the game has started off ideally, I would say, for both players, right? We see the Blood Tithe Harvester into the Fable. That's the classic 2-3 punch there for Javier Dominguez. But on the other side, there was a Leyline Binding to take out the token, and now a Topiary Stomper here to help ramp out David Olsen.
Yeah, so things going well for both sides. Now, what Javier is really going to be looking for here are those kind of top-end threats. Invoke Despair, Chandra. Those are the things that he needs to kind of put that pressure on David, because if the games go really long and you don't get the Invoke Despairs rolling, then you're just going to fall behind, because then David Olsen's going to start slamming Herd Migrations, put 5 3/3s on the battlefield, cast Atraxa, draw 5 cards, and if he's got kind of a comfortable life total, there's just no chance that the Rakdos deck can come back from that.
That's right. Atraxa usually gets David like 5 cards. They're all awesome. Itali, of course, is the other high-end ramp threat. And by the way, again, things going really perfectly for both players. As we see, Topiary Stomper is alive and ready. The turn it comes down, or the turn after it comes down, and it was actually attacking, I assume, the battle, and that's going to prompt Javier to trade off.
Yeah, and
he's somehow playing some attrition fight against this ramp deck now.
Yeah, one thing I want to note, though, is Javier did not attack the one turn where there were only 4 lands in play with the Topiary Stomper. Now, a couple of things there. I think it's pretty unlikely that Javier does not know the text on that card.
Yeah.
But also, remember, this is a different version than some of those domain control decks that we've seen. This deck has Invasion of Zendikar, right? So it could have been a situation where Javier was aware that that could have happened. If David goes Invasion of Zendikar, attack you with my Stomper, right? If that Blood-Tithe Harvester was tapped, you would have flipped that Invasion of Zendikar.
And that's exactly what David tried to do there, but Javier playing ahead of it and knowing that that's not it. And by the way, the perfect curve continues for both players here. We heard Monty at the news desk sort of describe how this ramp deck was supposed to curve out, and it's literally exactly what David's done. He went Stomper into Invasion of Zendikar, and that gave him the 7 mana there to have his Stomper alive. But 7 mana is absolutely the inflection point for the deck. That's when you can start to see one of those big 3 heavy hitters that we just talked about hit the battlefield. And that's the question right now. Taking a look at the hand for David, yeah, he has one of them. He has the Herd Migration, and even though that's kind of the most basic, it does the job.
It's still great. I mean, these
15.
Rakdos mid-range decks have fantastic spot removal spells, but I mean, just 5 3/3s, right?
Yeah.
Look at this board. Fable is a great card, the best card in Standard. But when you're facing up against an army of 3/3s, your 2/2s just can't even get in.
That's right. And certainly the idea of trying to grind through all of them. Oh, he drew an Archangel here as well.
Fantastic here.
And he can pay all the kickers.
Gets both 2/2s off the battlefield. Get your life total up to 21.
We're going to see go for the throat here.
You still gain life, right? Even if that's right. That's correct, right?
That was the question there, is if the creature that has lifelink is no longer there, does the damage still have lifelink?
I'm glad Javier asked that question. I'm sure all of us were kind of watching going, wait, what happens here if you do it in response?
Except for you and I, Paul. We, of course knew.
Yeah. No, I knew.
Being heavily studied up on the format.
Right.
We also previewed that card, you and I.
Yeah.
Together.
I don't know if that necessarily changes anything.
I don't think it does. Ooh, there's an Invoke Despair now in hand for Dominguez.
Good draw here.
It doesn't do much. The Leyline Binding, one of the reasons that David's so comfortable to just run one of those out on a token, I mean, he needed to get rid of the token, let's be honest, but still, that means that he can sacrifice that one to a future Invoke Despair and not have to give Javier anything back, and that's what's going to happen here. A couple of cards in the hand for Dominguez, but you mentioned the life total issue, right? And David Olsen is at a totally comfortable life total to start deploying his big threats now.
Yeah. So probably gonna see in attack. Is there a way to get? Oh no, that just flipped. Excuse me.
Right.
Oh, here's
there it is.
Herd Migration. Is that a second Archangel of Wrath too for David Olsen?
That's what we're showing on our graphic. I mean, it could be anything, right?
Yeah,
it could be an Atali, it could be another Archangel, it could be another Herd Migration.
And this is exactly the game plan here for this ramp deck, right? You survive, you're at a pretty healthy life total, you've got 8 mana in play. Any of the heavy hitters you draw are just fantastic here, and David has no shortage of them.
Right, and this is what we were talking about at the beginning when I said you'll know. I mean, he's just bludgeoning Javier now. You tap out for 7-8 mana every turn. How can Javier keep up?
Right, and this Archangel is just going to be able to get both reflections here, and probably just going to be really wanting to hold those ossifications in hand for Chandra, as that's also a very problematic permanent.
You can see Javier Dominguez is already feeling the pressure, as this has gone effectively perfect for David Olsen.
Oh, yeah.
But the interesting part, though, is that it has also gone perfectly for Dominguez. He has not missed a beat this game, right? Look at the cards in his graveyard right now. He's cast all the things that you're supposed to cast right up until Invoke Despair even.
Yeah.
And he's not even remotely close to being in this game.
So I want to say, basically, with kind of the game plans of both of these decks, if both decks kind of do their thing and curve out the way that you want, you're going to really... Oh, yeah.
This is painful.
You're going to really favor the side of the 5-color ramp deck, right? Because you were able to curve out, kill what your opponents did, and then play your heavy hitters. The thing, though, with any ramp strategy is it is not the most consistent deck. There are times where you draw too many ramp spells. There are times where you have too many 7-8 drops in your hand, right? And those are the games you lose that you could just kind of, you lose quickly and you don't think about.
Look at this. He's just jamming. Javier made a couple of reflection tokens, but he's going to take 15, go to 2.
You have 2 cards.
Yeah, there's no card here. There are no sweepers in the main here for Javier.
No.
Can't deal with all of these 3/3 beasts.
No, David Olsen is going to convincingly take game 1 from Javier Dominguez. And Javier is going to have to really cross his fingers and hope that David doesn't hit everything he needs to hit on time, because Javier, you know, he didn't have to have a draw this good. He can kind of piece things together, use the fables to craft his hand, etc. But if David just simply does this every game, Javier's not going to survive.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
This is going to take all of it down to 2.
All right. And
Looks like Javi just wants to see that last draw step before calling it a day on this game.
Just
qualification. Target.
okay.
Sure.
Getting an enchantment into play to potentially take less damage from an Invoke Despair and give Javier less cards.
So half 4 copies, okay?
Yes.
Very smart.
Yeah.
Javier trying to see if he can get enough damage in here.
Yeah, he did the kind of Splinter Twin
Right.
vibes.
And
But it just, at 21.
21 with a 3/4 lifelinker in play.
Right. Blood token's going to get sacrificed. David Olsen says, yes, yes. Desperation time for Dominguez. He's staring down. I mean, it's funny because these are some of the most powerful cards, but, you know, he's got Blood Tithe Harvester and Bankbuster in hand with a land. It's like cute.
Yeah.
Enjoy your Bankbuster.
Just being absolutely run over by these beasts. And it wouldn't shock me if Javier opted to bring in some sweepers in this matchup just because of how problematic herd migration can be.
Right. And I mean, I think the most impressive card from David is Atraxa because of the things that it can hit in this deck. Like the fact that one of its key removal spells happens to be an enchantment comes up a lot. It also plays battles, which it will hit quite a bit. 5-6 cards is not uncommon, and it is absolutely demoralizing for the other player. Atraxa stabilizes almost any board state if left unchecked just on its own. And if they get to untap with those cards, it's ludicrous.
Yeah.
Yep.
And 3 more bloods. Okay?
So,
So he's copying all the harvesters here, right?
yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4.
Remember, all those reflections, though, cannot attack. They've all been tapped to make a bunch of Blood Tithe Harvesters. He can kill 4 things. A pretty impressive turn here.
It is.
From Javier.
Kill. 2, 4.
Right?
And so he's going to do so.
So there's
Who says he doesn't have sweepers, right, Paul?
Right. So now there's a Blood Tithe Harvester in play, but that's still a lethal attack.
The problem
and there's
is,
1 red up.
Sure.
There's nothing that Javier can have that can kill a beast with 1 red mana.
That's right. And there's ossification just to seal the deal. Game number 1 goes to David Olsen. And this is a good time, Paul, to remind our viewers how the top 8 works. If you look on the left side of your screen, you'll see the dots above and below the cameras on the players. And normally there would be 2 there, as you know, most Magic is played best 2 out of 3, but Paul, it's a little different here in the top 8.
Yeah, now we're seeing 2 game 1s being played, or 2 pre-boarded games. And then after game 2, you will see sideboard happen. So games 3, 4, and potentially 5, those are the games where you're going to see the sideboarded matchups.
And that means we're playing best 3 out of 5.
Exactly, and that works pretty well if you're on David Olsen's side, because in this particular matchup, I think things do get a lot better here for Javier after sideboard going up to 4 duress. But you're going to see 2 game 1. So if David really looking to win these pre-boarded games, because I think it gets more difficult for him after those sideboarded matches.
And then for people that haven't seen a PT top 8 in a little while, we had a system before where you could lose, fall to a different side of the bracket, kind of fight your way through. That's not the case here.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
All right, well, not enough pressure here. No Fable here for Javier, which is really important to kind of get everything going here. So David with this Turn 4 invasion, meaning turn 5 he can already start deploying any number of those 7-drops he has in his deck.
It's really weird, Paul, to commentate this match because I feel like I don't even care what Javier's doing. Like, he does the same type of stuff every game, so it's like, yeah, whatever. I want to see what's going on David's side because that's what's going to determine this game. And Javier, by the way, he's doing it all.
Right.
He gets to invoke into an empty board to reload. He gets to attack for 4 here.
Now he is down to 10. You got to be really careful with these life totals. If Javier has a bunch of Invoke Despairs, you look, I mean, he's got all the tools here, right? You got Chandra and Invoke Despair. Remember, you can also go Chandra, double the rest next turn.
This is where a Tali would be the best one. And he does have a Tali. This is the best case here, right, to try to stabilize this board. He can get back in there.
You can get multiple permanents in play. Oh,
there's
my
goodness. And a Bank Buster on the other side. Oh, David Olsen.
Oh,
you
my
monster.
Gosh.
And let's see how many cards he ends up with here.
Best flip?
Best
possible flip.
And look at that. There's a binding. There's a herd migration already. There's a stomper.
I guess herd migration would have also been fantastic.
And a land. So only 4.
Only 4.
Now, he does have a moment here, though, right? Like, he needs to kind of hold his breath and hope that these 2 creatures can stabilize him. If he can get a hit in with Atraxa, if Atraxa survives, he's good to go. So, but if not, you know, there's a window here.
So now, go for the throat would have been really good for Javier to have, because then you can remove both creatures with the Chandra. For example, if Javier draws Go for the Throat, right? You can go Chandra, add 2 mana, Go for the Throat, both creatures that are in play.
Let's see if he rips one off the top here. Looks like no.
Oh, right. And doesn't quite enough to do the 1-2 punch of Chandra into Invoke Despair. And now that there are 2 creatures in play with the Bank Buster, Invoke Despair, not quite as powerful as it could have been. Had David just played Atraxa, for example, Invoke Despair gets your Atraxa out of the way, and you still get in for a good amount of damage and potentially have the ability to burn David out.
See, that's the problem, right? That's why a Tali was such the ideal one here for David. He's able to get a board state going, and he has multiple blockers. All right, well, he's going to go for Invoke.
I think you're going to see a
David going to crew here?
Yeah, this is a crew sack.
And that's going to be the creature.
Yeah, take 4, and you still have a giant, life-linking, flying creature of death.
And there's a duress, but that means that Atraxa is going to survive and live long enough to take a large chunk of Javier Dominguez's life total. But what that really means is time. And that's all David Olsen needs at this point with that hand, is he needs time to deploy those cards. If he gets to do that, he will win. And by the way, I have to say this again. This was the perfect draw from Javier.
Yeah.
He just curved into double despair.
Yeah.
And Olsen just took that to the chin and is like, I've got 14 power on the board. I'm going to just attack with both. And it's not getting better here.
Yeah, I was counting the lands just to see if we could maybe see potentially a flip to Tali. Not quite there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you need at least 9 mana to get to that point.
But David now at 13.
I'm going to cast 2 Stompers, and if it's all right with you, I'll shortcut.
He's going to cast 2 Topiary Stompers, and he asked, that's the polite thing to do, is to say, is it okay with you if I shortcut and just search for both at the same time?
Right. And I don't see a draw here with that life gain. Wow, hitting that Atraxa. Oh my goodness.
I mean, what I was going to say is, yeah, Javier doesn't mind if you shortcut your 2 Topiary Stompers at this point. He's got much bigger problems.
By playing out the Stompers here, he leaves up Herd Migration, which of course also gains you 3 life if you choose to go fetch a land, which is not irrelevant in this matchup.
And that's going to do it. Game number 1 and 2 go to David Olsen. And I'm going to tell you, Paul, you better hope, if you're Javier, that sideboard plan is a lot more effective. Because, again, that was the most he could do.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw him just curve out both times. 2 Invoke Despairs on curve that game, and it wasn't close.
Yeah. I think just the fact that he's not playing against blue mana in this matchup is huge. Cedric did kind of a quick deck tech with Olsen earlier and basically asked, what do you not want to play against? It's like counter magic. right? And that's the one thing you give up when you play the Rakdos mid-range deck. There's a lot of pros to playing it. Obviously, it worked over the course of the entire weekend, but in this particular matchup, Javier just doesn't really have too many great ways to interact with what David's trying to do.
Yeah, that's right. So he's got a very tall order ahead of him, does Javier Dominguez. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we will see the conclusion of Dominguez Olsen here in the top 8. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to coverage here of Pro Tour March of the Machine. Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. We're in the top 8. And we've got our quarterfinal match lined up for you here. We've already watched the first 2 games. And if you're sitting in the seat of Javier Dominguez, they did not go well. In fact, he threw everything he could at David Olsen, and it didn't matter. David still was able to win. But there's a twist. We're sideboarded now. Yeah. Does that help Javier? And if so, how much?
Absolutely, it does. Now, the most important card in this matchup for Javier is going to be those 4 duresses that he's going to have after sideboard, just to have ways to kind of disrupt some of kind of the mana development that Olsen might be going for, particularly Invasion of Zendikar. Imagine that last game. If Javier had that duress earlier and just took Invasion of Zendikar, that's a totally different game. Javier probably wins that game.
I think he wins that game.
Right? Because he had a decent curve into Invokes, into Chandras. But the Invasion of Zendikar allowed David to kind of leapfrog those turns, and boom, turn 5, he had an Atali and an Atraxa in play. This was turn 5.
All right, let's get underway here and see if Javier has found what he needs to combat the over-the-top ramp deck here from Olsen. Olsen's deck starts out slow. As you can see, he doesn't really have anything going just yet.
16.
But Javier does. He's got Graveyard Trespasser after a Reckoner Bankbuster. He's going to crew up the Bankbuster and jam. So he's already got him down to 16.
Yeah, and David with a mulligan and kind of a slower hand here. There's no ramp in hand. There's an Archangel. No great targets right now. If you have nothing to do, could see just playing it out. Just it's something that gets in the way of the Trespasser. Because taking a look at David's hand, it's just Herd Migration to Tali and all lands.
Yeah, and he's going to cash in this Herd. He may have a redundant, but yeah, he's getting rid of it. Now that is going to bump him back up to 19, buy him a little bit more time, but we don't see that perfect curve this time.
Yeah.
And no ramp. Like, he'd love to see a Topiary Stomper. Okay,
is that an invasion off the top? Okay.
It is, but he's not quite ready for it yet.
Doesn't quite have it. Now, Javier does not have land number 4 here.
Okay.
So likely going to see either the Harvester, Cycle of Blood here, if you can't find a land.
He could bank bust. He would love to see
Fable.
a duress here also.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he does not want to miss his land drops. He wants to cast that Invoke Despair on curve.
This is a huge attack, though. 8?
8, yeah. Go down to 11.
8 to
Yeah.
11? Yeah.
Cycle the blood. Hope to find a land here.
Yeah, he's just going to have to do it main phase.
Land?
Does he find a land to keep? No, he
No
doesn't.
land.
All right. So that means Invoke's probably off the table, but
Yes.
he does have a formidable board state, and David's already down to 11.
Yeah, I mean, this is
He's
going
to
to
take this turn
You
off.
go Invasion. If Javier found a Shieldred, if he goes... Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
this is kind of what he needed to do, though.
But
his
there's 4
blocks stink.
There's 4/4s in
What
play,
is he
right?
going to do? Chump block?
Right.
Oh, and there's Liliana Veil off the top of the library. The perfect answer.
Get you for 8?
Yeah, and he gets to eat
So you take 9.
the graveyard.
Right, takes a creature down to 2.
Oh, did you
take one with this.
Okay, I missed that. 20.
He's down to 2, and this is just one of those times where it's too slow. And, you know, this is
That's
where
it.
you look at an invasion of Zendikar,
Right.
and you go, no way. All right, so Javier Dominguez picks up a win here. Now, this is best 3 out of 5, so he's still got 2 more to go if he's going to win the match. But that was impressive.
Right.
We're good to go. Okay.
And you can also get a sense, oh, by the way, Dominguez on 6 here, for how a well-timed piece of disruption can really throw David's game plan off.
Right. But now you're looking at David's hand this game. It is fantastic. The classic stomper into Invasion of Zendikar start. And if Javier doesn't have a duress or any other way to interact with this, I mean, this could be over real quick.
I don't know if you caught Javier's face, but once you saw the stomper hit, this is where you go, yep, you're doing the thing.
Okay, there is a duress. This is going to be a very, very good duress. It's going to take that Invasion of Zendikar.
Not a lot of good news for Dominguez
likely.
outside of that.
Right.
Another stomper, a bank buster to help fill the hand. Look, he's under no pressure right now as David Olsen. That's the difference. Last game, he was getting hit for 4, then 8. Now it's like, okay, I would have preferred to cast my Invasion of Zendikar, but I got time and I have resources.
Yeah. So if you don't take the invasion, David can go Invasion of Zendikar, play a land for turn, attack the invasion with the Stomper, and flip invasion, unless Javier has a removal spell. Now, he does in that go for the throat, but still, you're developing David Olsen's board. He's accelerating up to that important 7. Now, while he doesn't have the 7, now any draw just becomes a fantastic top deck, right?
Yeah,
But there's a Stomper in hand, too.
Yeah, there's too many good things here for Dominguez if he's thinking long game. Sunfall might be an issue. Bankbuster is another long game card that's really good. But can you even just beat the invasion? Is that
right? I think I think the primary game plan should be to just try to slow down David's mana development as much as you can, and then on your side try to fire off those burn spells, right? The Chandras and the Invoke Despairs.
Get in with a Bankbuster. Those hits add up pretty quickly.
Okay.
Oh, we're thinking long game here for Javi.
Javier's on the all right. Don't draw anything big.
Yeah, next turn, David Olsen has a fantastic turn lined up.
Yep. Invasion.
Boom. Go get 2 lands, play a land, use the Stomper to attack the invasion. He'll have a 4/4 that can actually tap for mana as well.
Yeah, so this go for the throat will almost certainly
just
go
nail
ahead and
the
kill the Stomper here.
Okay. Oh, man. Javier knows he's walking a tightrope now. When you see your ramp opponent go ramp spell into ramp spell, you know you're at the mercy of the top of their library, and it only takes 1.
Right.
Like
Absolutely.
if a card costs 7 and it comes off the top of the library for David, the floodgates are open.
Right.
Go to combat.
So I have 3 cards.
In hand, I have 3, yes.
And this is where a card like Herd Migration just does so much in this deck, right?
Yes.
It gets you the lands, it buffers your life total, and also is a late game win condition. So there's 4 of those. 2 Vitalis, and of course, 4 copies of Atraxa.
And you can see Javier's.
I'll attack Invasion of Zendikar.
Oh, he's going to let him do it. So I guess he's just going to save that to kill the 4/4 here.
And I'll pass turn.
And Javier just looking for lands here.
Yeah.
Look, really just wants to play a Shieldred, because if you play the Shieldred, those 4/4s can't attack.
That's true. So now the top decks he needs to avoid are anything that costs 7, Leyline Binding, Ossification.
That's it, Marshall. Removal or big cards.
He needs to hope that David Olsen just bricks for the rest of the game.
He's got an Archangel, though. He can finish off the Shieldred if he wants. Right? He can attack with both, and then use the Archangel to finish off Shieldred if he blocks. So Javier might just put the Bankbuster in the way.
He might just trade.
Did he know about the Archangel? I'm not sure that he did.
No, he does not.
So this is rough. Now that you see the attack, you're like, wait, what did you draw?
Yeah,
it's got to be an Archangel here, right?
It has to be. Any other removal spell would have been used proactively to just clear away Shieldred.
Exactly. In which point, if you can kind of sniff that out, then maybe the correct thing to do is just crew the Bankbuster and block.
And just make a trade.
Right, and block the battle there.
Right.
Take 8.
Or just take it all.
Take all of it?
Are we just playing another 4/4 here?
Yeah, can he do both?
Yeah.
He can.
Yeah, the Archangel not super impressive on the empty board.
No, but it can start attacking for 3 in the air, right? And make at least mitigate Shieldred.
I think he's gonna cycle the land first. He has enough mana.
Okay.
Oh no, never mind. Oh, Sunfall.
Wow, that's a lot of respect
for the Shieldred.
Yeah.
Okay, now you do get to incubate 3.
Holy smokes! I did not think he would fire that off, but he's got a Stomper as well.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, he just put himself back up to 7 power on the board versus effective 0.
Right.
Can't argue with that.
Javier does have Invoke Despair, really wants this land here.
Did he hit it?
Does not look like he did. So
double Invoke.
This is tough. Probably you have access to Blood-Tithe Harvester plus go for the throat. Just wants to find that land.
Try to hit a land for next turn at least, and he did.
Okay, he did. Trespasser, not ideal here.
So can Javier Dominguez rely on a game plan that is just resolving Invoke Despair over the next 2 turns?
Yeah, I mean, it'll find him more action. So David still just needs to find
7.
Another top-end win condition.
Just a 7 ball.
Yeah.
Activate.
Pick your 7.
Combat.
All right.
Swing bow.
Go for the throat.
Sure.
Go to 9. Is it time? I think now you can just go Archangel of Wrath. Right? Just run it out here.
Just upstairs
for 4.
Both at you.
Ding ding.
Ooh, he's down to 5.
I mean, he's presenting lethal.
Right.
It won't work this turn
because of Invoke.
Right.
That'll get the 3/3 out of the battlefield. The Angel will still live. Go down to 2. But no haste creatures, I don't think. But any Archangel off the top would then be lethal as well. But I don't think he has a choice, right? The only play you have here is Invoke Despair, unless you want to draw a card off the Bankbuster.
Yeah, you could do that, make a Blood-Tithe Harvester blocks, but that's just playing with real fire there.
I think your plan here is, I hope you whiff, I hope you draw some lands, and I'm going to play this Despair and try to string together some spells here.
It's really tough because that's been Javier's game plan since he didn't take the invasion of Zendikar. I hope you don't draw well, and it's been 4 turns.
Yeah.
Like
it's worked okay, but
it actually has so far. But you know, every draw step is like a potential disaster.
Now, David also has a Leyline Binding in hand here, so
land go from Dominguez. Olsen on the precipice of knocking off a world champion in the top 8. He's not quite there yet.
Cycle.
He's going to cycle.
Another Leyline Binding.
Xeotor's stomping ground.
Okay.
Our proving ground, yeah.
So not quite there yet.
Another one.
Okay.
And a land.
That's a miss too. So Leyline Binding, not that great here.
No.
Javier's going to go down to 2.
Leyline Binding, Bankbuster. And I'll attack you.
Because
and Javier does have
anyway.
another Invoke Despair for this Angel.
He does.
And he's going to have a lot more cards here than David Olsen. So David needs to find a way.
Javi's game plan is working.
Yeah. Okay, Invoke. You do get your Bankbuster back too here.
Sure. So
you're right. And now it has more counters than it did. It actually improved it.
Bankbuster's back. Draw 1 card. Can David just find an Angel off the top here?
That would be the cleanest victory.
But now Javier's going to start developing his board. Double Blood Tithe Harvester, Fable, Shieldred, Trespasser, all kinds of stuff here.
He's past the turn back. Let's see if David can find it.
Oh,
And he
Angel!
does find the Archangel of Wrath, and that is going to do it. Javier could not fade the top decks quite long enough, and David Olsen picks up the victory in a convincing 3-1.
I mean, that's got to feel great, right? If you're David Olsen,
Incredible.
you're going up against one of the best players in this top 8 here, and your deck firing on all cylinders and knowing that there are 3 more copies of this deck still lurking around.
That's right. This is the matchup that he wanted, and you saw why, right? He was able to absorb everything that Javier threw at him. The last 2 games we watched, Javier resolved Invoke Despair twice, both games, and lost the 2 prior even while having done that. I mean, that is incredible stuff.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, this is the deck that you want to play. It's got the ramp strategy, and the Rakdos deck really doesn't have too many ways to kind of disrupt what you're trying to do. And if you can't put enough pressure on, I mean, the result is just kind of inevitable. You just know that this 5-color deck is just going to go over the top and just win with all the big top decks, right? David had so many turns to find something. Eventually he did.
Yes.
But that's one of 3, 4, 5 different cards he could have found.
That's right. All right, well, we've got Cedric Phillips with David right now.
I am here with the winner of our main feature match, David Olsen. Big smile on your face, understandably so. You just, frankly, dominated one of the best active Magic players here at Javier Dominguez. Your 5-color deck, it seems like it just cleans up on that Rakdos midrange deck.
Yeah, I think going into the tournament, I was putting together the sideboard guide for the team, and for Rakdos midrange, normal Rakdos midrange, all I wrote was no changes, deck's perfect. We sideboard 0 cards, so I think that speaks to how much I like the matchup.
Yeah, your draws were, I would say it's easy to say they were favorable, but this is just kind of what your deck does, right? You play a Stomper, you play Invasion, and then you just go from there.
Yeah, well, you know, when the deck is full of bangers, you're going to draw some of them, and it'll look crushing some of the time.
Well, banger after banger after banger indeed. You are on to the semifinals. Good luck.
All right, an impressive victory there by David. That's our first quarterfinal down, but we have more quarterfinal action for you coming up. We'll have Nathan Stoyer versus Ewan Chen. Don't go anywhere.